Throughout the cinematic history of horror films, we tend to see the same sort of patterns and tropes followed within the story. However, some movies bring a breath of fresh air to this genre while also ensuring the scare factor is well maintained. Blending creativity and innovation along with fear in horror films isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely Neil Marshall's cup of tea, who gave us the 2002 horror classic Dog Soldiers. This film was lauded and critically acclaimed for so many different aspects that we could almost do a point-by-point analysis of it. And guess what? Lucky for you, that's what we're doing today. This is the anatomy and origins of the werewolves from Dog Soldiers. That said, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do have a very quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who are the werewolves in Dog Soldiers? What is their origin? In the film Dog Soldiers, the werewolves are a natural predatory species which happens to be a hereditary trait instead of just cursed individuals. They are embodied by the Uath family, who belong to a lineage of Scottish lycanthropes that have inherited the remote highlands for generations. This origin makes them seem like they're apex predators for whom the transformation is a painful process, but a biological one. It doesn't portray them as victims of supernatural consequences, and this showcases a radical departure from the traditional lore surrounding lycanthropy. Now, their existence also rewrites the rules of infection. In a way, lycanthropy can be transmitted to outsiders as well through a bite or a scratch, and sadly, Megan falls prey to this. She was a zoologist who was seeking out these very creatures for her own study. Her story plays a key part in the film since after finding and befriending the Uath family, she was infected against her will and forcibly adopted into their pack. This whole subplot also shows the complex social structures of werewolves, which makes it seem like they possess a tribal mentality in a way because they are willing to incorporate converted humans into their family unit. But it's in their lupine form where they become powerful, wolf-like humanoids that obtain a sinister human intelligence. They're vicious predators who hunt humans to sustain their existence, often relying on hunting humans and keeping trophies of their victims. The Uath's homestead acts like a base of operations, which also suggests that their predatory nature is ingrained within them. This ancient species creates a disturbingly organized threat that exists to terrorize the natural world. What is the physical appearance of the werewolves? The werewolves in Dog Soldiers, when described on a physical level, can be called both unique and deeply unsettling. Their appearance, along with the way they're presented in the film and with the efforts of the production design, all make the werewolves really scary and plausible. These creatures stand roughly 7 feet tall on their digitigrade legs with their elongated feet and backwards bent knees. Additionally, they possess a lanky and muscular build, and as a result, this makes their silhouette more similar to a predator who's starving, while also hinting at their incredible speed and agility over their bulk. Their coarse fur has numerous patchy areas, making it seem like a thick mane is covering the head and shoulders, and also running down the spine to the buttocks, with smaller tufts on the elbows, legs, and groin. This selective furring helps enhance their unnatural look. Also, their hands are humanoid, but end with bony fingers that have razor-sharp claws, which seems capable of shredding even metal. Their faces are a fusion of human and wolf in a grotesque manner, which features elongated snouts stacked with rows of sharp canine teeth, along with bright yellow eyes that seem to burn with their feral intelligence. It's this combination of skeletal exposure, powerful muscular build, and a daunting blend of other features that creates one of the most original and genuinely frightening werewolf designs in film history. What are their physical strengths and abilities? The werewolves in this film are biomechanical engines who have a hunger for destruction. They also possess a terrifying arsenal of physical attributes that elevate their status to that of perfect predators. Their most defining characteristic is their almost total invulnerability. Instances of using conventional military force are seen to be almost useless against them. High-caliber gunfire does little more than sting and temporarily stagger them, but even that just ends up fueling their rage. They demonstrate a remarkable capacity to withstand and instantly recover from any injuries that would seem to be instantly fatal to any other living creature. This is horrifyingly illustrated when one of those creatures survives a close-quarters stabbing that coats the entire room in blood. The resilience of the werewolves is matched by their outrageous physical strength. They can effortlessly shred through the metal panels of a Land Rover. They can very well throw fully grown armored soldiers across a room as if they were weightless, along with being capable of smashing through heavy wooden doors and walls with force. Additionally, in spite of their lanky 7 7-foot-tall figures, they are in no way slow. They possess explosive speed and agility, which makes them capable of easily running down sprinting soldiers, along with making powerful leaps to the second stories of houses to access their prey. These abilities are enhanced by heightened senses. Most notably, monochrome vision allows them to see in pitch darkness as if it were daylight. This also grants them a clear advantage in any kind of nocturnal combat. Their special set of abilities includes them being capable of moving with absolute silence and also hiding in plain sight in barns and vehicles that aren't too far away from trained soldiers. They also employ tactical sabotage, like disabling a generator and even shredding fuel lines to cripple their prey's resources. All of these abilities make them an almost unstoppable force. Emphasis on the word almost. Do the werewolves have any weaknesses? The werewolves in Dog Soldiers are ridiculously powerful and extremely difficult to defeat, but they aren't without weaknesses. Exploiting them requires an overwhelming amount of force or a specific substance. Keep in mind, conventional weapons like assault rifles, grenades, and knives are largely ineffective and end up only angering, slowing, or stunning these creatures. Their ability to regenerate allows them to survive and rapidly recover from catastrophic injuries. But their one main vulnerability is silver. While the film doesn't convey this particular weakness through dialogue, it makes it very clear through the action. Silver acts as a strong neutralizer of their supernatural resilience. When Sergeant Cooper stabs the transformed Ryan with a silver letter opener, the effect is immediate and critical. The silver doesn't kill Ryan, but it definitely ends up nullifying his regenerative power, crippling his supernatural protection, and making him vulnerable to damage that his body would have otherwise reacted to indifferently. Now, without silver, destroying a werewolf is a mammoth task that requires the almost complete annihilation of the body. The only reliably successful methods are dismemberment, decapitation, or incineration, with the third one ultimately achieved in the film with the propane tank explosion. Now, these acts destroy the creature's physical form and obviously fully pierce right through its healing factors. Their immense resilience is tied to their transformed state, but once they're back in their human form, they remain as vulnerable as any other person. But overall, their weakness is more than an Achilles heel in a way that requires an overwhelming destructive power. How do the werewolves transform? The transformation process in Dog Soldiers is a brutal and involuntary biological function of the werewolves, which is a shift away from the stereotypical gothic curse that often defines lycanthropy. For the Uath family, it's a natural trait for them, hence a species-specific quality, and it's as inherent to them as breathing, although infinitely more violent. The change is a result of the full moon, but unlike traditional lore, it's not a singular event. Here's what's different. The transformative urge can occur on multiple nights during this phase, and individuals can only possess a limited amount of willpower to suppress this urge. Private Cooper and the infected Sergeant Wells use a strange analogy to describe it, calling it a mounting physical pressure, like needing a shite, that can be delayed through effort, but it can never be prevented entirely. This is demonstrated by Megan, who manages to resist the change for much of a night through sheer concentration before finally running out of time and eventually succumbing. Now, the film deliberately obscures the full metamorphosis and never shows it directly. This choice helps to heighten the horror through implication and sound, with additional focus on the terrifying precursors rather than the CGI-assisted change itself. Now, this transformative process begins with distinct physiological signals. The eyes shift to a bright yellow and begin to dilate. The teeth begin to reshape, the vocal cords get distorted, and end up having a grating version of a human voice. This experience results in pain, but it's not a uniform one. For a newcomer like Megan, she experienced severe discomfort and distress, while the seasoned soldier Wells called it outright agonizing. Once the threshold is crossed, the final transformation is swift and brutal and takes just a few seconds to complete. The sound design and the actors' performances sell the visceral horror far more effectively than a visual effect could, in a way that emphasizes the loss of humanity through horrifying sounds and a chilling silence before the fully transformed predator emerges. This approach reinforces the film's maintained portrayal of the werewolf as a terrifying natural predator whose very biology is a weapon. What's their behavior and intelligence like? The werewolves are distinguished by their strategic intelligence, which makes them genuinely terrifying creatures. They operate with a sophisticated pack mentality and demonstrate complex coordination along with tactical planning that rivals their military opponents. Their hunting strategy is methodical and seemingly well-planned, as they employ divide-and-conquer tactics, attacking from multiple angles to create confusion, and also use the environment to their advantage. An instance of their intelligence is when they deliberately disabled the fuel lines of the Land Rovers and cut the power to the farmhouse to gain a tactical and psychological edge. But their intelligence extends far beyond their generically cunning tone. They're also shockingly familiar with human technology. They're shown to be operating door handles, zippers, and even firing a shotgun immediately after pulling it from a soldier's grasp. This cognitive ability of theirs is paired with a horrific craving for psychological warfare. They're sadistic hunters who love to terrorize their prey, as the movie shows an instance of the prolonged torture of Private Terry Milburn. In another case, we see the werewolf being deliberately slow with the execution of Joe Kirkley, which ends up traumatizing him even more. These creatures often choose to instill fear rather than kill immediately and hide in the shadows to maximize the apprehension that will be felt by their human prey. Now, their social structure appears complex. They potentially operate under a hierarchical system with alpha and beta roles. They also show a surprising lack of selfishness with their territories towards infected outsiders, as seen by their adoption of Megan into the Uath family pack. Even in human form, their predatory nature is ingrained, since the movie shows the Uath cellar serves as a larder for human remains and that they're implied to consume human flesh regularly. This combination of strategic pack hunting, tool usage, and psychological torture, along with a complex social system, redefines the werewolf as a highly evolved, intelligent, and ruthless predatory species. Their behavior encapsulates the real terror, which is being hunted by a superior, calculating, and daunting force. How do the werewolves interact with humans? In Dog Soldiers, the primary interaction between werewolves and humans is similar to that of hunters and prey. They're intelligent and strategic predators who use their clever pack mentality to terrify and ultimately kill their victims with efficiency and in a brutal manner. Their goal seems like a sadistic enjoyment of the hunt, especially considering the scene where they are psychologically torturing soldiers. However, their interaction with humans goes beyond just killing. It also involves infection through a bite or scratch so that they can also forcibly assimilate humans into their pack, as we saw with the zoologist Megan. This act of adoption transforms a human into one of them and ends up creating a horrific family bond that's centered around their collective predatory nature. What sets the practical design of Dog Soldiers werewolves apart? The practical design of the werewolves in this movie is a stroke of brilliance in creature effects. The innovation and the practicality set the horror characters apart by stepping away from the genre norms. With a strong commitment to in-camera authenticity, director Neil Marshall's vision was clear. He wanted to avoid the traditional bear-like brutes and create something entirely new. The resultant creature was born from a sketch in a pub and was an elegantly drawn-out, monstrous bipedal wolf with an almost feminine silhouette that was both beautiful and terrifying. This aspect, from the very roots of the character, was realized by special effects maestro Bob Keane and his team, who poured a considerable portion of the film's budget into sophisticated animatronic heads and meticulously detailed bodysuits. But the genius of this design, however, truly lies in its movement. Marshall cast professional dancers and martial artists to get inside these suits, and as a result, their movements were fluid, swift, and elegant. This was a stark contrast to the lumbering movements of those typically associated with werewolves in film. This kind of practicality created a unique, uncanny, and terrifying presence that felt totally real because it was real on set. It was this dedication to relying on practical effects that granted the creatures a hardcore level of authenticity that CGI of that era couldn't possibly match. Also, they could interact physically with the environment and the actors, and also react to light and movement in a believable way that sold the horror factor completely. This decision ensured the monsters were never a result of distracting computerized effects and were rather authentic, actual threats. Every swipe of the claw and moment of silent stalking felt immediate and dangerous. This hands-on approach, from concept to choreography, helped create one of the most original and enduring werewolf designs, and it's still a testament to how practical craftsmanship can elevate a film's quality. How do these werewolves compare to traditional werewolf lore? As mentioned earlier, Dog Soldiers deliberately executes a subversion of the traditional werewolf lore. This innovation was impactful and well lauded for shifting away from the typical tropes of the scary creature from popular horror films. On one side, we have classic narratives, from The Wolfman to An American Werewolf in London, that are based on the tragedy of an individual who's cursed, and where a good man struggles with his monstrous side. On the other hand, we have Neil Marshall's film, which discards this pathos entirely. Here, the Uath family isn't cursed in the first place, they're a natural hereditary species of the apex predator. Lycanthropy is their biological state and not a form or result of any supernatural punishment as such. This shift helps transform them from tragic figures into absolute, ruthless, bloodthirsty killers who, along with their pack of super soldiers, dedicate their existence solely to the hunt. This redeveloped lore of werewolves allows the film to focus its energy on the external survival battle of their prey, who in this film are the highly trained soldiers who get utterly outmatched. The werewolves' terrifying element is strengthened by their shocking intelligence. This is again a stark contrast to the often mindlessly portrayed savage beasts as shown by traditional werewolves. Here, they are strategic tacticians who coordinate complex attacks and sabotage equipment and also unleash psychological warfare, making them anything but a simple beast. Even on a physical level, they're shown differently than werewolves of old. Their bodies are largely hairless, with leather-like brownish-gray skin that stretches tightly over their ribcage and lean muscles, giving them a raw and almost skeletal appearance. Additionally, by removing the element of the curse, Marshall reshapes the entire conflict. Now, the film becomes less about the horror of becoming a monster and more about the horror of being devoured by it. The audience's empathy lies entirely with the relatable, humorous, and resilient soldiers, making their desperate fight for survival all the more immersive. Combined with its groundbreaking practical effects that created a uniquely elegant and tangible monster, Dog Soldiers successfully dismantled the genre's oldest tropes to create something brutally original and intense by focusing purely on the experience of prey confronting an utterly wild predator. What impact did Dog Soldiers have on werewolf cinema? Dog Soldiers influenced werewolf cinema by violently tearing the whole genre away from its overused tropes of personal tragedy and gothic curses, instead launching itself into a world of grit and military-like survival horror. Along with its formidable reinvention of the monster itself into an intelligent, strategic, and cohesive family unit, it also refocused the narrative entirely onto the prey by making the desperate struggle of survival by the human soldiers the heart of the film. Additionally, the film's commitment to groundbreaking practical effects set a high bar for on-screen horror at a time when CGI was often failing to convince. This film proved that werewolf stories could also be high-octane, muscular action films without sacrificing genuine horror. Dog Soldiers also directly paved the way for another Neil Marshall cult classic called The Descent, and that film reiterated the impact of practical effects and realistic horror. Overall, Dog Soldiers honors horror classics of old while sharply carving out its own distinct legacy. Marvelous verdict! And that's our video. We hope you had fun diving into this cult classic horror film from 2002. The filmmaking techniques, the base of the story, the characters, and the overall writing all contribute to this film being one of the most innovative and groundbreaking ventures in the horror film sphere by breaking stereotypes and tired tropes and presenting an altogether fresh story. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and comment your thoughts down below. We want to hear your thoughts on Dog Soldiers because, in our opinion, people just aren't talking about it enough. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more such marvelous content. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.